I am Christelle from Diabetes Strong. In this video, we'll be talking about what should I eat with diabetes. So I've been living with type 1 diabetes since 1997. I've written countless articles for the Diabetes Strong website, but that does not make me an expert when it comes to nutrition. However, I happen to know someone who is. So for this video, I invited Ben Tzeel to come join us. So Ben is a registered dietitian or RD, and he's also a strength coach, and he also lives with diabetes. So he truly is an expert when it comes to the question of what should I eat with diabetes. So Ben, before we dive in, how about you start out by introducing yourself?
Thank you, Christelle, so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. My name is Ben Tzeel. I'm a registered dietitian, certified strength and conditioning specialist, and I've lived personally with type 1 diabetes for over 20 years. My diabetes actually turns 23 this August, which is kind of hard to believe, but here we are. And professionally, I run a dietetics practice that specializes in helping people with both type 1 and type 2 diabetes to have amazing blood sugars while eating the foods they love and becoming the strongest version of themselves. I've got a few other dietitians on my team who also live with type 1 diabetes or type 2 diabetes because we get it from both a personal angle and a professional angle. And that I feel like is the best combination to really get amazing results for our patients. We've helped well over 1,000 people already in just a few short years, and I cannot wait to see what is gonna happen going forward.
Thank you so much, Ben. That was a great introduction. So guys, as you can hear, Ben is a really good person to discuss diabetes and food with. Ben, first question of this video. So let's just dive in and use the title of the video. What should you be eating with diabetes?
So that's an amazing question. I feel like if I had $1 for every time somebody asked me what they should eat living with diabetes, I probably could buy both of us a really nice car right now. And the big thing about it is there's really no food that is off limits when living with diabetes. You hear about people saying, well, I shouldn't have carbs or I shouldn't have sugar. And it's not so much that you shouldn't have those things. It's about being smart when consuming those things. You got to think, how do they fit into my daily nutrition goal? How does, for example, this cookie fit in with everything else? And how am I going to be able to assess it to make sure my blood sugars stay in a relatively good range after the meal and then of course return back to normal? So the big thing isn't so much what should I be eating or what shouldn't I be eating? It's more so how can I include foods in a way that I enjoy and maintain great blood sugar control at the same time. So if we're getting specific, I usually tell patients, hey, I want you really focusing on getting sufficient protein in, getting sufficient fiber in to help prevent some of the blood sugar spikes after meals. And then also making sure, hey, are you getting in the fruits and the veggies? I'm not gonna pick up one of those plates and say, have half of your plate be fruits and veggies. I actually had one of those plates during a talk that I gave to a group of people living with diabetes, and I actually tore up the plate and threw it because it's not the stuff that we need to be focusing on. It's more so, hey, can we find a way of eating that you enjoy? And can we find a way of eating you enjoy that allows you to have blood sugars in range as much as possible?
Ben, I know that you and your team of registered dietitians works with both with people living with type 1 diabetes as well as people who live with type 2 diabetes. So can you tell us a little bit about those two groups? Do those two groups have to eat differently?
That is a fantastic question. And the principles that I mentioned in the first question, the protein, the fiber, the veggie, the fruit, those are principles that can apply whether you have type 1, type 2, or don't live with diabetes, because they're gonna help you with respect to body composition, with energy levels, they're gonna help with how you're feeling overall, and they're just the building blocks to build meals from. Now, with respect to differences between type 1 and type 2, I wouldn't say it's necessarily so much a different way of eating, it's really more so thinking about it, a different way of how you approach it. Because remember, with type 1, you're going to have some sort of insulin administration. With type 2, there's a very good chance that you don't have to take any exogenous insulin. So the biggest thing to think about is, okay, how are the carbs going to affect me at this meal? Did I pair them with some protein? Did I pair them with some fiber to hopefully blunt some of the spike? And then are my blood sugars after meals returning back to normal range? Whether you have type 1 or type 2, those are all the considerations you have to think about. Because sure, you're going to have to adjust with your care team the medications a little bit differently, but ultimately it comes down to, hey, am I getting the right things at the meals? So there really isn't a huge difference. There's no like, you must eat this way with type 1 and you must eat that way with type 2.
I think a lot of people, both newly diagnosed as well as people who've been living with diabetes for a long time, kind of looking for, let's say, a holy grail of eating with diabetes. So is there such a thing? Is there such a thing as a diabetic diet?
Man, if there was a holy grail of eating, it would make my life so much simpler. But alas, there isn't, and variety is the spice of life. So if someone's newly diagnosed or if they've had diabetes for 30 years and they've been on this quest to figure out what is the best way of eating while living with diabetes, I'm here to tell you there's no perfect answer. And I know that's probably not what you want to hear, but it all comes down to what you can stick to, what you enjoy, and what does best with your blood sugars. So you'll hear people on the low carb side of things. Well, there's no carbs, my blood sugars are in a great spot, I'm able to consume everything and my blood sugars barely move. You get people on the other end of the spectrum that just eat carbs, very low protein, very low fat, and their blood sugars are in range all the time and their insulin sensitivity is crazy. But those are both extremes, and most of the time those are really hard to stick to. So when a patient comes to me and says, hey, I want to do keto, or I want to do low carb, or I want to do super high carb, I ask them why. Because a lot of times people do them for a week or two and they can't stick to it, and then they get discouraged and they get upset. So the biggest thing is figuring out a way of eating that works for you and your lifestyle and your schedule while still incorporating those core things, the protein, the fiber, the fruits and the veggies, so the food composition is good, and ultimately figuring out what makes your blood sugars run well. Some people need, a little bit on the lower carb side. Some people need a little bit more carbs. It also depends on your activity level. There's so many different factors and everybody is totally different. I've had patients eating 400 grams of carbs per day with a great A1C in the high fives. I've had people eating 30 grams of carbs per day with that same A1C in the high fives. Totally different people. One person active, one person not, one person a guy, one person a girl. Doesn't matter. It's all about what works best for you.
So even if there isn't such a thing as a diabetic diet, is there anything that you find that people living with diabetes can eat freely, meaning any kind of foods that will have a limited impact on blood sugars?
So this is amazing, because I remember back when I was diagnosed, when the Earth's crust was still cooling, things were very different than they are now. And I was told that there were certain foods that were free foods, where I could have as much of it as I wanted. It wasn't going to do anything to my blood sugar. The best example I remember was string cheese, and I think the other one was peanut butter. But the irony is, over time, what I've discovered and what I've seen in the research and working with patients is there isn't necessarily a particular food that's going to have zero impact on blood sugar, like absolutely zero, unless it's like sugar-free Jell-O or something like that. And I don't know about you, but I wouldn't want to eat boatloads of that myself. But here's the big thing. Foods that are lower in carbs tend to have a lesser blood sugar impact, simply because fat in isolation is not going to do anything to your blood sugar. So if you were to take a shot of olive oil, which I don't recommend this, but if you did, and then you sat there for 2 hours and that was all you had, your blood sugar is not likely to do a whole lot. Now, on the flip side, some of those foods like the string cheese, or if you were to say, oh, I had some cottage cheese or I had some peanut butter, because there's fat and there's protein, there's a chance that it may not impact your blood sugar much right now. You may not notice a whole lot of difference, but over time, what may happen is you'll see the breakdown of the protein and the fat in tandem, and then your blood sugar may slowly but surely rise. So not to say there's no such thing as a free food, but everything needs to be watched to a degree. The one thing I will say is any sort of fibrous vegetable that's lower in carbs, for example, zucchini or cauliflower or broccoli, tends to have pretty much no impact on your blood sugar. Lettuce would be another example. So those would be things that I feel like you could get away with having a pretty large portion without any concern. But the moment you introduce, for example, the dressing or the hummus or something else that's got other nutrients in it, whether it's low in carbs or not, that's where protein and the fat can start to play a bit of a role.
Another question I quite often see is, what foods do people with diabetes need to avoid? Or asked differently, what food or drink should I limit if I live with diabetes?
So in terms of things to limit or not to limit, I mean, the obvious answer as a dietitian across the board without even thinking about diabetes would be, well, don't eat all the fried food and don't have the milkshakes and don't have all the dessert. And the thing is, I'm not going to be someone who's going to sit here and advocate that you should have those things all the time. But what I will say is it's something where it's going to help from a sustainability standpoint to have them periodically, to build them into your life. So what I like to tell people and the patients that come through our practice is the 90-10 rule, where 90% of the time you're eating on point. You've got the protein and the fiber, you've got the veggies and the fruit going on, you're hitting your targets for the day, your meal composition is great. But on the flip side, then you've got the other 10% of the time where you have a little bit more fun. You've got the restaurant meals, maybe you've got the desserts, you've got other things in there that you're not having all the time, but you're having them periodically so you can enjoy them. And then that way you're able to fit them into your life and not feel like you're depriving yourself. We also don't want is where you feel like you can't have anything, you can never have the dessert, you can can never have anything fried, you can never have anything that's considered unhealthy by society, and then suddenly the moment you do decide to have it, you just absolutely go crazy on it, because that is not going to help you from a blood sugar standpoint or really from any health standpoint. So I wouldn't say there's anything that's necessarily off limits. I wouldn't go crazy on the really high fat, high carb foods all the time, but understand there is a time and a place, and if you're able to work that into your nutrition plan and have a strategy around the dosing and have a strategy around how you're going to account for it, there's no problem having that time to time.
Okay, Ben, last question of the day. And some of the viewers might already have figured out the answer to this just based on your previous answer, but let's go for it. Should people living with diabetes avoid carbohydrates? And will the answer differ if the person living with diabetes do not manage their blood sugars using insulin?
So you probably, just like you said, can probably tell what I'm about to say, but no, you don't have to avoid carbs unless you feel like your blood sugars are amazing without carbs and you enjoy not eating a lot of carbs and your energy levels are great and you're living your best life. Then by all means, you don't need to have carbs in your life. But if you enjoy having them, you're overall making quality choices with respect to the food composition, everything's kind of fallen into place, your blood sugars are on point, you don't need to get rid of carbs at all. And if it comes to type 1 versus type 2, the biggest consideration is really just thinking, what do those carbs do to your blood sugar? And how do you feel when those carbs impact your blood sugar? If you're on insulin, are you doing a pre-bolus? What else can you be doing to make sure that the carbs impact on your blood sugar is overall minimized or mitigated so you're not spiking as high? Can you throw some fiber in there? Can you throw that protein in there? If you're able to do that, it really doesn't matter all that much. I mean, obviously with type 2, it's gonna be a little different because if your blood sugar is higher, you may have a different strategy to intervene to bring it down, but don't feel obligated to completely avoid carbs. Just do your best to make quality options the majority of the time.
Before we wrap up this video, Ben, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Not really. I think the biggest thing is just reminding that life is too short to not enjoy the foods that you love. So finding a way of eating you enjoy that helps keep blood sugars on point, allows you to be active, allows you to live your best and fullest life, that is the big thing when it comes to food and nutrition and diabetes.
Ben, thank you so much for doing this video with me. I know you answered a lot of the questions that people have about what can you eat with diabetes, and we really appreciate your time. So before we wrap up here, how about you let our viewers know where they can find you and your team? I will also leave links down in the video description.
Thank you for the opportunity to talk about nutrition and diabetes and blood sugars. It's definitely areas that I love chatting about, and to be able to reach out to myself and the team, the best places to do so would be through Instagram, which my Instagram is Man of Tzeel, so MANOFTZEEL, or through our website, which is yourdiabetesinsider.com. I was getting a lot of people asking about blood sugar friendly breakfasts, so as a result, I created a free guide, 7 blood sugar friendly breakfasts that are all delicious. They're also, 7 of my favorites as well. So you can nab that at yourdiabetesinsider.com/breakfast. Definitely looking forward to supporting however I can and ultimately making this community a better place.
Thank you so much for watching this video where we discussed what should I eat with diabetes, and thank you to Ben for answering all of the questions. If you like this video, please give it a like below and leave Ben and I a comment. Also, if you like my content, remember to subscribe to my channel and turn on notifications. That is that little bell. That way you'll be informed whenever I post new content. Thank you so much for watching.